good afternoon, everyone, once again, and welcome to the penultimate Friday lecture of this semester. So the focus today is on synthesis, and I'll say a little bit about what that means. So in previous sessions, in the session I recorded for last week, I gave this example of plagiarism. So in lecture number 4, the focus was on academic integrity and plagiarism. In lecture number 5, there was a focus on finding your voice, and this was an example of someone not finding their voice and just copying and pasting and plagiarizing that way. And I compared that to someone doing the same thing, but with paraphrasing. So on the right, there's a text that is really just copied and pasted from 2 sources, not great sources either. On the left, there's a plagiarism-free version of that, because it's maybe the student has started with copying and pasting, but then they've kind of rewritten, they've provided referencing. And what I said in last week's session was, okay, although this is not an academic offence, it's not the best way really to approach writing, and it's just all it really shows is that you can copy and paste from somewhere else and you're skillful enough to put it into your own words. But I don't think this is going to enable you to achieve the standards that you want to achieve in your essay writing, because there was no sense of a writer's voice in this paragraph. Okay, so if you haven't watched the lecture from last week, maybe you can go back and look at some of the content in there about how we use reporting language to find and express our voice. But the focus today will be on synthesis as an alternative to paraphrasing. I mean, synthesis involves some kind of paraphrasing, but it's more about getting sources together into our own writing, and that's a little bit more complex than just copy, paste, paraphrase. So if paraphrasing is not the answer, what is the answer? Well, I'm suggesting that synthesis is the best way to approach your academic writing assignments. And going back to lecture 4, which was about plagiarism, we had this metaphor from Williams and Carroll, who said that like good academic practice was a bit like going to Tesco, buying ingredients. You might be kind of following a plan, but you prepare and combine these ingredients to make a pie, and then you can serve this to your friends and family, and you can confidently say, I made that pie. And if we think about academic writing in this sense, then the ingredients are, Tesco is the library, or wherever you get your text and sources. The ingredients are your reading, and your job in putting together an essay is like, it involves what you do with those ingredients. You selected the ingredients, you decide like how much of this one you use, how much of that one you use, you prepare the ingredients in your own way, and you bring them together in your own special way with your combination, adding whatever salt and pepper or anything else you want to add. So I think that's a nice metaphor for academic writing. How the metaphor works with plagiarism is you go to Tesco, you buy a ready-made chicken pie, you serve it to your family and friends, and you tell them that you made it, which is not true. Okay, so I'm a big fan of that metaphor, as you can tell. And what we're focused on today is that act of finding the ingredients and putting them together. Okay, and we're going to start with a really simple task to introduce that. I've shared a link to a Google document with you, but you can also access the Google document via the QR code currently on the screen. And I'd like to ask you a question, really simple question. So hopefully you recognize this place. what you can see in the photo that I'm sharing with you right now. I am somewhere there, and I don't know if anyone else is too. So I'm going to send you to a breakout room in a moment, so that as a group you can brainstorm some ideas to answer this question. Okay, very kind of essay style question. Critically evaluate studying at the University of Hertfordshire. Critically evaluate studying at the University of Hertfordshire. And maybe just to make that a little bit easier, well, when we say evaluate, we kind of mean give a judgment. Is it good? Is it bad? Critically just means that we are considering multiple perspectives, and we're trying to look at perspectives other than our own, maybe finding a theoretical framework by which to make a judgment about studying at the University of Hertfordshire. But fundamentally, I could just turn this question into: the University of Hertfordshire is a good place to study, discuss, because evaluating is about saying, is it good? Is it suitable? Or to make it really simple, I'm basically saying, is the University of Hertfordshire a good place to study? And in the Google documents, okay, what you'll find is I've got is the University of Hertfordshire a good place to be a student? I'm going to send you to breakout rooms. I will add your names here. So room 1 will be group 1, room 2 will be group 2, and so on. After I've put you in the breakout rooms, I think I'll do 3 rooms. If you go to a breakout room and no one else is talking to you, then by all means come back and we'll close the room and reallocate you. But together, any thoughts you have about reasons why the University of Hertfordshire is a good place to be a student, you can write in here. For example, the students are very friendly. Miriam. And maybe a negative would be the staff are unfriendly, e.g. So any reasons that you can think of that make University of Hertfordshire a good or not so good place to study, as a group, just put them in, get them into a table divided by kind of yes and no, good and bad. And I'd just like you to take 4 minutes to do that. So like say hello to each other and then quickly start getting some ideas into the welcome back. Can I ask a quick question? You can write in the chat, but it's better if you can just say yes or no with your microphone. But how many people in the room have done IELTS before?
What did you say?
Have you done the IELTS exam?
No.
No. Okay. Anyone done kind of essays at school where they were kind of like advantages, disadvantages?
Yes.
Pros, cons, that kind of thing.
Yes. Yes.
Right. Yeah, and I mean that's what I would expect. I think it's quite common at school. A lot of English language exams kind of ask you to do something like that. And to be fair, I've just asked you to do something like that as well. Now, my chair just collapsed. So if you've been to my classes before, you might know that I'll always say that when you start an assignment, the first thing you do is you think about the question and then you start reading and you look for answers through your reading. And obviously what I've just asked you to do here is the opposite of that. I've given you a question and just asked you to kind of give your opinions, if you like, and your experiences. Now, I'm doing that just so that I can demonstrate what I mean by synthesis and how it's going to work for us. But to link it to the act of writing and organizing a piece of writing, in my experience, it's very common when students first come to university, and even sometimes when they're in their second or third year, to take to look at assignments in terms of like pros and cons, for, against, advantages, disadvantages. And often that can kind of limit our thinking, and it can limit the way that we try to organize our writing. So if I asked, I'm not going to ask you to write an essay on this topic, but if I was asking the question, is the University of Hertfordshire a good place to be a student? We've done this brainstorm where we've got lots of yeses and lots of nos. I think what some people might do, especially like, you know, when you're at school or you're preparing for an English exam, and even what some teachers might recommend that you do is say, okay, first of all, you argue one side and then you give the other side. And there's, you know, that can work, and certainly in terms of traditional Western rhetoric, our kind of argument structure, we might typically weigh up two sides and say, well, I've got more things to say about yes than no, so I'm kind of arguing more yes than no. And what we would typically do, like in kind of UK writing traditions, would be we'd start by giving the counter argument. We'd start by saying these are the reasons why it's not good to study here, and then say, however, that's outweighed by all of these positive things, and then we talk through the positive things. But once you come to university, where you're having to write about quite complex subjects that are very rarely just yes, no, good, bad, and often you're working with, maybe always you're working with word limits, and actually going through both sides of an argument can take up a lot of words, and it can involve a lot of description. So if you take that approach, where we start by giving all of our no's and then we give all of our yeses, we'd probably be just describing and then saying however, and then describing some more. That's not analytical. That doesn't take too much skill to do. And there might be some element of repetition, because I see, for example, here, one student has written the accommodation is quite expensive, but in this box we said the accommodation is good, so we've got something good and bad about accommodation. It's typically better to write about those two things together so that we're not repeating ourselves. But if we take a for against structure, we probably will end up repeating ourselves a little bit. So what I recommend that we do, after we've brainstormed or we've done our reading, and we look through the various reasons why the University of Hertfordshire might be a good or not so good place to study, we can look for themes. Okay, so you can go back into the Google document yourself if you like, if you're not still there. And can you tell me any themes that you notice?
Staff related.
Okay, something related to staff, right?
Something related to the mode of teaching. That is, to be honest, this is about online learning.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just putting brackets around mode of, because we could have a our discussion could be around staff, around teaching, anything else.
Mark?
Yeah.
Can I say, I think certain areas of the university needs renovation, like the cafeteria.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the building that I'm in, some of the toilets as well.
Yeah, they need, yeah.
Okay, so that's but like, I think what you're referring to there, someone's written the infrastructure is well equipped. You might be saying otherwise, but would it be fair to say that a lot of your comments relate to facilities? Would that be fair?
Yeah, you can say that.
So if we consider facilities to include accommodation, buildings, and resources. Okay. And I think like what we might start to see is activities that cater and help to the growth of students. I think that we could relate that to teaching. Infrastructure is well equipped. We've got that. We can relate that to facilities. Supportive staff are supportive and friendly. That's our staff. Do you see anything else in here? I'm seeing like life study balance, societies of every interest. The environment is friendly. Do you see any the university supports students during the study? Do you see any connections there? Don't worry if you don't. So I think what I'm seeing, like you've given me these three themes: staff related, teaching, and facilities. I think there's also something about like social life and community. Okay. Now, this gives us 4 themes from our brainstorm. And so I think that could work quite well. If we've got 4 themes, that's kind of like if I was writing an essay, I could have like 4 stages or 4 sections of my essay. And that might be 4 paragraphs, or, you know, some of these topics might need multiple paragraphs. So I'm certainly not going to give you any, I'm not going to say, oh, if you've got 4 themes, it will be 4 paragraphs, but there will be at least 4 paragraphs if we've got 4 themes. My advice generally when you're going through this process of, okay, I've got all of these details and I need to look for themes around which I can organize them. My advice would be to try to identify 3. 3 is a number that generally works very well. And it's also a good way to guide your thinking, because if I had something like staff related, teaching, facilities, accommodation, social life, friendliness, I could end up with like 6 or 7 themes, and they are all relevant to, they're all there in our brainstorm, but we're not going to be able to organize our content around 6, 7 different themes. It's going to be very difficult to control that. So if you can identify 3 or 4 themes, you might consider, and there are no right or wrong answers here, but for example, mode of teaching and staff, I think it would be possible to kind of just break that down into teaching and learning, and think about like, well, some staff, I think some of the staff you're referring to are teachers and some are supporting learning. I think facilities covers a lot of things. And I think community might include the social life among students, as well as the kind of friendliness of staff as well. So we could think of staff in terms of academics, but also professional staff, and just generally whether staff are helpful and friendly or not. So we might not even need to use the word staff, but to break it down into teaching and learning, facilities, and community. Now look what happens to my planning. Okay. What I'm introducing you to here is called a synthesis table. And I'm going to imagine that your 3 groups are 3 texts that I've read. So the first text I read was Hidalgo et al. The second is, and apologies for my pronunciation if it's not good, is Guefala et al. And then I read Opalua et al. And if I know that I've identified certain themes in my reading, I can write down here, okay, teaching and learning. And I'm gonna go with your categories: staff, teaching, facilities. The U is silent in your last name, so it's just Gefel. Gefel or Gefal?
Yes, exactly, because it's spelled in French.
Okay.
So do you to stop it from being pronounced G?
Okay. So look what I can now start to do. I'd go back to my reading notes from Opalua et al. And I've got environment is friendly. I'm going to go there. And now I'm just kind of like moving my, I might call that community actually, because it's friendly. Staff are very, oh, sorry. Got to get things in the right place. Staff are very friendly. Online learning is not effective. Geez, it's not the university's fault that we had a pandemic, no. Here's a couple of things I agree with actually, but I've recently found that there are some good places to eat on campus. You know, while you're making notes into a synthesis table, what you do is you arrange, like, it doesn't matter whether you do one horizontally and the other vertically, but what I've done is vertically I've got my themes. Across the top I've got 3 different sources, and I can take details from different sources and put them in certain boxes. So what happens next when I go to my second source, the infrastructure is well equipped. I put that in facilities. Good accommodation, I'm putting that in facilities. You can choose like ways that you might want to highlight points as like positive or negative. The university is diverse and inclusive. I think this is about community. Some modules are not well organized. I'll put that in teaching, and so on and so on. If I go to Hidalgo et al. Group 1, I've got a point to make about community. And I won't do the whole thing, but we're gonna do another exercise where we build on this a little bit now. But hopefully what you can see is if we record information like this, I've got 3 different sources, but by bringing them together into this table, I can see all of the points that have been made, and I can read across. I can say, okay, here are the points that are made about community, and there may be some repetition. And you know from your reading that you sometimes see someone will make a statement and give 2 sources in brackets instead of 1. So that's something that we can do here. But by looking across this row about community, for example, I can see immediately what my 3 sources are saying about this topic. And that can help me to make an evaluation of that. Like in terms of the university community, there is a sense that it's a diverse and inclusive environment, and a diverse, inclusive and friendly environment that provides societies on a range of interests, and studying at the University of Hertfordshire therefore gives us the opportunity to have a positive life study balance. And notice that I'm summarizing and paraphrasing at the same time. So you'll notice that I started to use my own words there to try to join these points together. It's very difficult just to, when we're trying to take 3 different sources or more and say, discuss the way that the points that they make about one topic, it's very difficult to do that. If just copying, paste, we're less likely to do that. We're much more likely to use our own voice to bring those points together. And I think it becomes relatively easy to look across that line and start putting ideas together and turning this table into paragraphs. And I hope you agree that compared to just making separate notes on every source, like kind of this looks. If I've got my 3 sources and 3 sets of notes here, it's very difficult to immediately turn that into a piece of writing. If I start with the synthesis table, things I think start to get clearer. Does that make sense to you? Does anyone have any questions about this?
No, this is very good.
Okay. And I think,
Yeah, it is good.
this applies
Yeah,
to
I
any
agree.
subject area, right? Any kind of assignment that you're doing is going to cover a number of themes. Often the themes will be in your assignment question, but of course you will discover themes as you're reading. We didn't do any reading here, but now I'd just like to do a second task to show you how this works with it when we're writing, when we're starting with our reading. Okay, so our second task is about synthesizing sources, not just brainstorming, but finding details in sources. And when I give you the instructions, you might think, oh, this looks more difficult. But actually, I think in some ways this is easier because you're not having to come up with the ideas yourself. You're just having to look for them. And I hope that you'll find that when you take this approach, your reading might become a little bit faster and more focused. Okay, so we've got 9. We've got 9 people in the room, and I've got an essay question for you. Of course, we're not going to write an essay, but we're going to do some basic preparation in just 15 minutes of how we might start answering this essay question. The question is this: what are the causes of acts of plagiarism among university students? What can be done to address these causes? So we're looking for the causes of plagiarism and what universities or people can do to address the causes. Now, at the beginning of this session, I put a PDF in the chat, and this is the PDF that I'm sharing with you right now. I also sent you by email a link to that PDF, which is on the Centre for Academic English StudyNet page. Okay, and this is quite a large document, and that's because it has a number of extracts from literature, real literature, about plagiarism. Now, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to send you off into breakout rooms again. But in your, we're just going to have 2 breakout rooms, and we'll just have, we won't even have 2 breakout rooms. Let's do this. Okay, so I will, if you scroll down to in the Google document to the next page, you'll find this table. Okay, so what I've done this time is I know that I'm looking for causes of plagiarism and possible solutions. And I know that I've got 8 sources. So I've kind of switched it around. So the sources are on the left and the themes are at the top. And what I'd like you to do, I will give you each one extract to look at. And I'd just like you to go to that extract, note the name of the author, just see if it says anything about causes of plagiarism or possible solutions. And just, if you could each just write one cause of plagiarism that you see in that extract or one possible solution. You might not find both because of the way that I've chosen the extract. And just try to find something in the text and put it into the table in your own words, if possible. Once you've made one point, then you can go back to the text and find another, or you can go on to the next extract. But just if each person can add 1 point to the table, then we should find that in about 10 minutes, we quickly fill up our table and we'll see how actually we can get through 8 texts very quickly. So in the Google document, I'm going to just write, yeah, I'll write your names, and we'll do it like this. Isabel, can you look at extract 1, please?
Sure.
And Isabel, extract 1, there's a 1A, 1B, 1C, and so on. Just look at 1A first, and then if after you've written one comment, you can go back to 1B if you like, but just start at 1A. So Isabel, if you can do extract 1, Mahesh, extract 2, Mercy, extract 3, Miriam, extract 4, Samantha, extract 5, Tick, extract 6, Akindele, extract 7, Paul, extract 8, you can just do 8A. Suliat, if you are there, could you do extract 1B? So there's 1B. And finally, I've got Tick. I've got you showing us twice, so that's, yeah. No, I don't need to.
I've
That's
doubled up
fine.
in. Yeah,
That's fine. I don't need to add another. That's perfect. So does everybody?
I'm here, Mark. How do I get the extract B?
Okay, so can you see in the chat? I'm going to share the document with you again. If you look in the chat, you should see a file. There's a PDF, and if you open the PDF, this is what you'll see. Can you see that?
I'm trying to check now.
Okay. Okay, and for the next 9 minutes, I will. I'll turn my camera and my microphone off. But if you want, I'll be here. So if you want to ask any questions, ask, and I'll respond. And hopefully, we'll start to see the table filling up in the Google document. And if I see any problems or I have any questions for you, I will ask you. Okay. Any questions before I stop talking?
Mark,
Yeah.
how do you write the certain techniques of plagiarism? Is it like a table on document on Google Docs?
Yeah. So in the Google document, so.
Oh, I can see it. It's okay.
You can see it, yeah. In the Google document, you just scroll down past our synthesis table, and you'll see, yeah, you're either going to record a cause or a possible solution. Okay. Okay, Tim. Well, yeah, if the challenge is to like find a point in the reading, then I think maybe that there's a different issue to address. But we'll come back to that maybe more in the final session. Okay. So because I know that some of you will have classes to go to and lives to get on with, I hope that what you can see at the moment is as our synthesis table develops, we are being quite careful to record information alongside bibliographic details, right? So any point that is made on this table, I can see instantly where it comes from. So this idea that students having to acknowledge sources is a possible solution suggested by Soden 2005. And this is where things like your critical thinking and your critical evaluation can come into play as well, because it looks pretty obvious to me that, yeah, students need to acknowledge sources, but as a solution in itself, what does that really mean? So when we compare it maybe to some other solutions as they appear, we might start to, this is where we get our own kind of understanding and our own voice. We'll start to feel more persuaded by some points than others. But in terms of how we turn this synthesis table into an essay, this will be something that we cover next week, because on the final lecture of the semester, the focus will be on flow. So how do we take contents for an essay and put it together into a structure that's going to work? Actually, kind of a taster for that is when we have a synthesis table, it becomes much easier for us to look down the table and start to notice patterns and connections. Okay, so I think maybe, sorry, point here like we've got, I think some of the points that are being made are related to culture, and some of them might be about, so there might be cultural causes, there might be mechanical causes, so people getting things wrong, and then I think there might be institutional causes. So if I try to look for connections, I might think, okay, so some writers are talking about culture, some writers are talking about actually the skills involved in correct citation and the kind of that mechanical process. Some of them seem to be talking about institutional issues, institutional problems. When we look across at the solutions, we might find the same themes, we might find different themes, but actually a nice issue here is that I'm already starting to see some connection. I'm seeing something about institutions. I'm maybe seeing something about like the skills and the mechanics. And I think I'm starting to see a completely new theme here as well, which is I can give it a name now, and as I read more, I might change that name and refine it, or I might link two things together. But I think I'm also starting to see something related to kind of student responsibility. Okay, and maybe that's something like academic conduct or academic integrity. Maybe when I've done more reading, maybe I'll be able to develop that idea. But I hope that what you can start to see here is if we identify themes in our synthesis table, and we might start to do something like highlighting in different colors to help us to join things together. I think I'm creating notes here that could quite easily become a few paragraphs. I might, once I've done all of the reading, I should, I think, have several paragraphs that I could write about the causes of plagiarism, and I should be able to organize them as well. And that means I can start off by saying there are three main causes of plagiarism: lack of cultural understanding, lack of writing skills, and lack of institutional support or guidance, something like that. And going for, like, if I can find 3 labels, that might be a good thing, 3 or 4. I'm not going to say there are 10 reasons. I'm going to try to recognize ways in which my multiple points can come together. But we'll do more of that next week. I know that some of you will have assignments that you're working on now, and I really hope that you can apply this to the writing that you're doing. Put together a synthesis table so that while you're reading, you can record details that you find in your reading, and you'll be able to keep track of the references, you'll be able to notice themes as they appear, and you'll be able to make analytical comparisons and contrasts when it comes to your writing. So if you try using synthesis tables, you're very welcome to take a synthesis table into like the LRC and talk to one of my colleagues about your work in progress, you're very welcome to send your synthesis tables to me. Or I'd also just be very interested in hearing about your experience and what you find works or doesn't work for you.